It's the 16th edition of ITW this year, and that's why we're asking some of the event's top speakers to answer 16 questions about their session, their work, and their lives. First up, we have Andrew Lipman, who's partner at Morgan Lewis. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
My pleasure, Bill.
So question number one, can you please introduce yourself and your work?
Sure. I head our telecom practice at the global law firm of Morgan Lewis. We have 30 lawyers in our practice. Our practice covers the whole waterfront of technology, media, and telecom, transactional as well as regulatory. We have lawyers in the U.S., London, Brussels, Mideast, and several locations in Asia. We do a tremendous amount of work in the infrastructure area, including submarine cables, metro fiber, towers, data centers, and the like. And I'm pleased to say I've been at all 16 ITWs.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How many ITWs have you been to now? So this is the 16th.
I actually used to go to the global satellite meeting that Intelsat used to have at the Shoreham Hotel here in Washington. That was the predecessor for ITW. So I'm delighted that after spending some time in Chicago and Atlanta, ITW is back at home in the Washington, D.C. area.
Oh, so we're going way back then. Question number three would be, what areas are you mainly focusing on in your practice this year? What's been taking up most of your time?
Sure. We've had a very active year in terms of infrastructure. We've had several dozen clients apply for broadband funding at the NTIA under the Middle Mile program. A dozen or so, 24 clients applying for RUS funding from the Department of Agriculture. We've also been heavily involved in infrastructure deals, a number of subsea, metro fiber, tower, and particularly data center deals. It's been a very active 12 months in terms of infrastructure investments. And notwithstanding the financial markets, we still continue to see a healthy pipeline of broadband infrastructure deals. I mean, users could give up the lease of their house, the keys to their car, but they're not going to give up their phones or their TVs for streaming. So, we continue to see an active year.
What do you think has been the most important development in TMT in the past 5 years?
I'd say the most important development is the recognition that broadband is part of infrastructure. 5 years ago, we never saw an infrastructure fund in telecom. I mean, right now it's hard to imagine an infrastructure fund that has a portfolio that doesn't include broadband. And we've seen infrastructure funds from Australia, Canada, the UK, Europe, all focusing on our sector. It's given a lot of tailwind to the sector. It's increased valuations. It's brought on new sophisticated investors. It's really been a breath of fresh air.
What do you think the main areas of investment will be in TMT in the coming year?
I think we'll see a tremendous amount of broadband investment. First of all, we have the $43.5 billion BEAD funding in the U.S., where at least a quarter of that has to be a matching share. We're actually encouraging clients to do more than that. We have other broadband funding programs in the U.S., and we're seeing broadband funding in Europe and Asia and other developing countries, probably over $125 billion globally of broadband funding. And broadband funding is a catalyst. I mean, it leads to construction of towers and data centers, and it's jugular networks that lead to more capillary networks. So it's really a catalyst for even more multi-level broadband spending.
What panel are you going to be moderating at ITW this year?
So I'm actually doing a panel on the effect of inflation and the financial markets on infrastructure development. So I think that's going to be a very interesting panel because, it's going to contradict a lot of the so-called popular wisdom that deals are going to slow down because of the economy. Yeah, that may be true in other sectors, but I don't think so in ours. I mean, I still think that, there's a very, very healthy demand. There's a very acute need, globally for more broadband infrastructure. But yeah, it's a different climate, and it has different challenges and opportunities for both investors and sellers. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the panel.
What was your very first ever paid job?
My first ever paid job was a special assistant to the U.S. Secretary of Transportation. And it was interesting because it was the late 70s, 77, and I was involved in, you know, uh, airline deregulation, rail deregulation, motor carrier deregulation. So it's a perfect entry for me the next year to get into telecom with the breakup of the Bell system and telecom deregulation. So I feel like deregulation has also become somewhat of my middle name.
Not a bad first job, that. What is the professional achievement that you're most proud of?
I would say the professional achievement I'm most proud of is I was one of the co-founders and senior VP legal regulatory for MFS. MFS was the largest competitive local exchange carrier, CLEC, and we got the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, to allow interconnection with the Bell system. I remember the CEO of MFS telling me it could never get done. We got it done. And he said we were too dumb to know that we couldn't do what we were doing. So, that spawned a lot of other local competition. A lot of my former colleagues at MFS are scattered throughout the industry as industry leaders. So that's the issue I'm most proud of.
Nice. How many articles and books have you had published?
A lot. I have 5 books. Two of them are Dow Jones books on telecom and about 170 articles. I have to say I'm writing a little less now than I used to, but it's always fun to try to unpack new developments.
What's the first thing you do when you arrive at an industry event?
I'd say the I do is try to identify who else is there. I mean, it's particularly capacity events are tremendous networking opportunities, for C-suite people. I mean, it's a real good opportunity, particularly after the ice age of COVID, to see old friends, old colleagues, and that is one of the most exciting things about capacity events, not just the outstanding content, but the extraordinary high level of the attendees.
Speaking of which, where's your favourite spot in National Harbour for a end of day drink?
Well, there are many, but I like the bar overlooking the river.
Which 3 people, dead or alive, would you have on your ideal conference panel?
One would be Bill McGowan, founder of MCI. I don't think a lot of people realize, what a tremendous leader, he was in local telecom. I would think another would be my old Stanford law professor, Bill Baxter, who became Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department during an administration, that led to the breakup of the Bell system. And then finally, Elon Musk. I'm just confident, that whatever he says is going to be path-breaking and controversial. We need to get him at the next ITW.
Certainly do. We'll see what we can do about that. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Wine or whiskey?
Oh, whiskey.
Like that as you raise the cup there.
I wish it was whiskey, but it's coffee.
Okay. One question back then. What advice would you give somebody just starting their career in our sector?
I would say stay in our sector. I have a brother who was involved in the paper industry, and he used to joke he could be like Ichabod Crane, go to sleep for 20 years and come back and know exactly what would be on his desk the next morning. The beauty of our industry, it changes daily, through technology, through regulation, through marketing, and, I think it's going to be even more pivotal, more, important to the economy as time goes on with issues like cyber and privacy. So stick with it. It's going to be an exciting ride.
And finally, what's coming up in the next 12 months for you professionally?
I'd say what's coming up, might be what we've seen in 2001, 2008, 1991, with an economic slowdown. As a senior partner told me decades ago, it's not really the direction of the economy that's relevant, but the velocity of the direction. I think we're going to find some very interesting distressed assets out there. I think we're going to see incumbents get rid of non-core assets. We're going to see a number of these non-core assets, picked up. I think there's going to be an exciting shakeout in the sector, and that just opens up a whole new room of opportunities.
That sounds pretty good. And thank you very much for your time, Andy. And we will see you in May at ITW at National Harbour.
And I'll buy you that drink in the bar.
Sounds
Okay,
very good. Thank you.